In today's gospel, we see Jesus interacting with one of the scribes, and it's a really, really interesting interaction because, first of all, it shows us that not all of the scribes and the Pharisees, etc., were incapable of seeing the truth. Again, it's a reminder, like the gospel showed us just a couple of days ago, that the problem with the scribes and the Pharisees was not that they were scribes and Pharisees. The problem was the hypocrisy that had overtaken them. But here's a scribe who comes to Jesus and asks him about what the greatest commandment is. And when Jesus gives his answer, the scribe responds to him, you are truly great, Master. And you know what Jesus says to him then? Jesus says, you are close to the kingdom of heaven. There's something really profound and beautiful about that interaction. One of the key things, though, about today's gospel is this reminder that the first and the greatest commandment is still love God. The second commandment, and it's still essential and it can never be negated, but it's not as great as the first, but the second commandment is love your neighbour. And the interesting thing is, often in the modern era, what's tended to happen is, at times, we've tended to conflate the two or put neighbour perhaps even above God at times. But if we go back to the Gospels, that's not what Jesus tells us. Love of God must come first, and I believe there's a whole lot of good reasons for that because, well, first of all, God is God and He is worthy of our absolute fullest and greatest forms of worship. Secondly, I'm not convinced you can really love your neighbour as well as or effectively as possible without God and without loving God first. It is that love of God, that humility and submission to God, I think, that allows us to have greater humility for our neighbour. I think it's that humility and submission to God that gives us the grace we need to love above and beyond the call. I think about some of the experiences I've seen in action with professional welfare agencies, for example, which do really great things for people. But the more professional they become, the more policy gets put in place and the more it seems the restrictions go on the way in which they help people. Whereas the church has traditionally been a place where we would go above and beyond. If you got that call at 2 a.m. to help someone in need, you wouldn't say, look, call me at 9 because that's when the office opens. You would get up and you would go and aid that person. And you would keep aiding a person even if there was no tangible end in sight. So often you'll get professional welfare organisations that really expect people to fit within a box. And if they can help you within that box, great, they'll do everything they can for you. But once it looks like this is going to be an ongoing situation that falls well outside the box, it's very common to see them sort of throwing their hands in the air, not knowing what to do. Whereas Christianity traditionally has understood that you might have to walk with a person for the rest of their days on this earth because they will never fully be able to recover from whatever problem it is that causes this deficiency and need in their life. But that's okay because the call of Christ is to walk with and to love people no matter what. But here's the thing. In order to be able to love your neighbour with that kind of fullness and devotion, I believe you need God and you need grace to do that. And that's why the greatest commandment still is love God with all your heart, all your mind and all your soul, because that gives you the grace you need. That gives you the humility you need to be a better lover of the people around you, of your neighbour, of those who are in need. Today's Saint quote of the day comes from Saint Clare of Assisi, and she said this: love God, serve God. Everything is in that. This really is echoing again today's gospel call. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind and soul, and then serve Him by loving your neighbour. This is the fundamental heart of our Christianity. This love for God and this absolute devotion to Him that should motivate us to go out into the world and take the gospel to those who are in need and to share with and be Christ's hands and feet to those who are broken and hurting.